What's going on, everybody? It's Andy Coppins, publisher of Talking10.com, and of course, Talking Badgers. You're tuned into Talking Badgers TV, and we're here on the heels of Wisconsin's big 59-10 victory over the Utah State Aggies. Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter at Talking Badgers and, of course, at Talking B1G for all things Big Ten. But that beside the point here, big victory, 59-10 over a team that was 3-9 last season. That kind of doesn't compute unless you saw the entire game. The Badgers were down 10-0 almost to the midway point of the second quarter, and the Badger defense turned it up, and then it was all Wisconsin Badgers. 59 unanswered points, a big 8-minute 25-second drive drives home the point. The Badgers defense comes up big, gets an interception, and suddenly a 10-0 game turns into 10-10 at the half, and it was all Badgers from there on out. Just a great overall performance. So what were the big takeaways from this contest for the Wisconsin Badgers? Well, my number one takeaway is new defensive coordinator, same old result. That is great news if you ask me. A lot of people would question, how would Jim Leonhard look and what would this defense look like in his first ever game? And you could have just put a tape of the Wisconsin Badger defense from last season on. Wouldn't have been able to tell much of a difference. Maybe there was a little bit more in the pass rush last year, but considering the lack of experience from the outside linebackers here, I don't think you can really fault just about anything that happened. They gave up over 300 yards of total offense, but the vast majority of that came through big plays in the pass game when it really didn't matter, and on the ground in the first quarter. In fact, the Badgers gave up 54 yards on the ground in that quarter, but just 31 yards beyond that. 85 yards on the ground, I'll take that any day of the week, especially because Utah State wanted to get the ground game going, and they were completely shut down after that first quarter. So that's good news all around. The best part of the news is that they created 4 turnovers, 3 interceptions, and a forced fumble, and that was going to be a key. There were secondary parts that were changing for the Badgers going into this season. Nick Nelson, Derek Tyndall played well. In fact, you didn't really hear Derek Tyndall's name at all in this game. That was a good sign for me as well. You got to like what the Badgers did defensively in this contest, especially because even if they gave up the 10 points, those 10 points really were because the offense actually kind of just handed them to the Aggies more than anything the defense gave up. So you have to like the overall defensive effort. Going forward, though, you've got to see some of the little things shored up, and considering this is the first game, I'm taking it. The second takeaway, a massive positive. Jonathan Taylor, the stars rising for this true freshman. Going into the game, personally, I was kind of surprised that he was listed as a co-starter. I thought maybe they would give him some reps and let, in the fourth quarter, if things were kind of in that blowout territory, and they would let Chris James, Bradrick Shaw just kind of do their thing and see who kind of wins that battle. Instead, Jonathan Taylor got some carries early, busted a few loose, and boy did he end up with a dime of a game. 9 carries, 87 yards, a touchdown, and he just looked the part of a star. He had speed, he had vision, he had breakaway ability, and he had the ability to make people miss in traffic. I loved it all the way around from Jonathan Taylor. I know it was the first game and it was against a little bit of a suspect Utah State defense, but when it comes to first games, sometimes you just know when you see a star, and that was definitely the case for me in this contest overall. I liked Jonathan Taylor. I think you got to give him the ball more and more here in the next couple of games. I don't think he gets the start next week. I think you still start Bradrick Shaw, who finished just 1 yard shy of him on a few more carries. Give him another game, see if he can bust loose against Florida Atlantic. But I think the real battle here is actually Bradrick Shaw against Jonathan Taylor. I think Chris James just didn't have the oomph for me today. Maybe it was an off day. Maybe you give him another game as well. But for me, Jonathan Taylor looks like the future of the Badger backfield, and he looks like a lot of the guys in the past. In fact, I'd say he had a very Brian Calhoun-like performance in this game. Just maybe a little bit better in terms of the pass protection, which was a surprise for me. And then my third and final takeaway from the Wisconsin win is a negative, a big negative for me, and that's Wisconsin's pass protection being piss poor. Poor Alex Hornibrook. He took a beating early on in this game, and I didn't like the fact that despite his 244 yards, 3 touchdowns to 0 interceptions, a nice positive in this game, he was just beat up at times. He got sacked 3 times. One of them was probably his fault more than the offensive line, but there were multiple times where it was 3 steps backwards for Alex Hornibrook, and oh crap. That's not good news for me, and you gotta wonder if they can shore it up. The only positive is that as the game went on, I thought that the offensive line did a better job protecting him. There were times where he could step into throws to Troy Fumagalli, Quintez Cephas. They gave him a good pocket at times, but this was a negative overall performance for me from the offensive line, especially because this is a group that's supposed to be experienced and a group that was supposed to be better than last season. They didn't really show it early on, and I liked the progression as the game went on, but this is against, again, a suspect Utah State defense, and you have to wonder against the Nebraskas, the Iowas, the Michigans of the world, if that's going to be a problem. So it's something to watch for and a negative in this game. But overall, you have to like the fact that so many of the key players performed well for Wisconsin. 59-10 is the score line. Wisconsin takes on Florida Atlantic, who got their brakes beaten off by Navy tonight as well. Florida Atlantic, an 11 a.m. kick on BTN next Saturday. We'll have much more all throughout this week on TalkingBadgers.com. Well, really Wisconsin.Talking10.com. And of course, we'll have plenty here on Talking Badgers TV throughout the next couple of weeks. We're going to have a lot of features here on the website that you haven't seen before. So please don't forget, hit subscribe. And until then, on Wisconsin.